All right, we're through to our last section, which is change management, and you'll see in the overall diagram that we're working through during this session that we're here at the review and learn stage. We've worked our way through, and it's important to just understand that the issues you face around change management, whether that's with suppliers or internally with your team or within other council teams, are frequently encountered. So there are lots of resources to help you with the change management process internally and externally. Two of the most important things that you'll need to consider are, how do you overcome resistance to change? Those can be personal or within a team or within a structure. And how do you implement changes in a really clear, concise, and consistent manner? So in the last few minutes, we're going to touch on change resistance, identifying your key stakeholders and champions, possibly even barriers, and how to engage to ensure continuous improvement. The first study around, case study around change management is probably British Land. They're a large landowner and developer in the UK, but they have really clear, comprehensive guidance for employees, internal and suppliers, which really start to involve all of their documents into contracts, into their supplier engagement, but help suppliers with that change management process from higher carbon options to where they want to be in 5 or 10 years' time for their projects.
So there's always many barriers to change. What are some of those barriers that you might experience as you try to implement these sustainable procurement practices? And you want to pop a couple of barriers into the chat. We know there's plenty of barriers, so don't be shy. I can think of a barrier off the top of my head, which might be time and resources and competing priorities. Thanks, Robin. So not having the resources, thanks, Tran, not having that understanding. Costs, yes, how we apply this to SMEs. Training, how do we make changes across all council departments? Yes, this is a big one. And this is where we want to start small and prioritize. And yep, competing priorities. So let's have a quick look through some of these barriers. I can't change because that's the way we've always done it, or it's not my job description. Might be barriers to engagement around resources, time poor, internal politics. Might be a lack of consistency or too many messages in council communications. Definitely silos and having that decentralised procurement can hinder cooperation. Transparency, so you start to lack visibility across what everybody's doing. And of course, complexity. There's many different complexities across procurement and councils. But let's now go into just 6 key elements that can help you roll out change management and overcome some of this resistance. So the first one is really creating the case, so selling it. So to ask your colleagues how to help them understand the why. What is the case? Why are we doing this? Leverage your council commitments and just try to empower colleagues to have that positive influence and change, that they are part of the solution. The other one here is around identifying key stakeholders. So people are definitely your key to success and you want to bring them along from the beginning. Don't leave them to the end. So find who your champions are across council. Sell your business case. So try and communicate this. Think about the what's in it for me perspective. Remember that there's no one size fit all. So there will be different pain points across council. and just try and focus on the areas where you can have the quick wins at the start. Collaboration, talk to your colleagues, have them heard. There's going to be a lot of apprehensions, but just work through it together. And if issues are raised, make sure that they're resolved as well. And just trying to embed sustainability into the processes that are already taking place.
Now, within our last activity, with our last breakout room, what we'd like you to do is join the group and then step out. What are your next 3 steps? So think through, what are your next 3 steps towards more sustainable procurement processes at your council? 3 steps, and then map out when those steps will be taken. And importantly, while we're dealing with change management, what support do you need to achieve those steps? So 3 steps, when they'll be undertaken, what support you may need, and then lastly, if you get to it, how will you measure success with those steps? So you'll receive that invitation to join the group. There'll be a 6-minute time session, and then our final come back to discuss the outcomes. All right, we are back, and I'm just seeing the screen. We had some interesting discussions about next steps because we were looking longer term. We were looking at sort of 2030 and 2050, really long-term steps. But then, of course, the 2025, the next 4 years of specific actions. We talked a bit about support, and the City of Sydney feels really quite supported. There's a really good network of experts internally, but we had the conversation about who to ask and how to find the right person to ask. But Nicole, I'd be interested on any feedback from your group.
Yeah, so I can actually jump into this slide, which summarised what our group. I was with Cannon Bay and Waverley. And so they talked about having that continuous support. So having some education around what sustainable procurement is, but also support to connect the dots between council's organisational targets and strategies and what that means for procurement. So just, communicating sustainability policy to those who are doing procurement. And we also talked about just, starting small and creating some specific criteria to roll out in construction projects, get some wins on the belt, which touches on this last tip for success here, which is to really start to celebrate those wins. So just start small, get a few wins, and then make that known as well. And the last couple of tips for success here is really about creating a simple debrief document. And this was a tip earlier in just organising a meeting. Have a document, a 1-pager that steps through a couple of questions to help you evaluate, and same with your contractors. So try to get feedback and bring that into that continuous improvement. Great, so to just summarise, and we'll take any questions as we come to an end as well. You can pop those in the chat, but implementing sustainability measures takes time, commitment, and patience. I think that really sums up this last topic as well. Sustainable procurement and embedding sustainability is really long game. So it does require some patience, but focus on those quick wins. Remember that collaboration is key. So multi-stakeholder collaboration, either within council or between you and the suppliers or other experts in the areas, really key to success. And then make sure you're connecting that case for sustainable procurement with your organisational goals, targets, and commitments. So align your sustainable procurement changes with council's overall goals. So avoiding disagreements on these. Embedding into procurement process, you're already managing procurement, so just embed those sustainability criteria into what you're already doing and try to prevent it from being perceived as a bolt-on. This should just be common practice. And lastly, let's break it down into manageable actions.
And there's a practical checklist. It's linked in the resources. From 1 to 5, we've been talking you through these steps: plan, approach, evaluate, report, review, and learn. But there's a checklist. You can see A to D under number 1, things you need to go through, steps you need to go through, and ways in which you can work with your teams to achieve these steps. So that practical checklist is in the resources. There's the SIPs, Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply Chain Management. Details are there. There's the Dr. Cotter's 8-step process for leading change, and of course, being an effective change agent. These resources are all being provided along with the slide pack from today. But it's good to remember that change management may seem like a slow process, but every step in the right direction that you can share will make all of the difference.